Hi, I'm Joe Carraro. The Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. You know, in the good old days, I used to go down to Venezuela quite a bit. When I first started my visits there, it was a time of great friendship between our countries. We all still remember the oil embargo of 1973 when our great friends, the Arabs, cut us off from oil deliveries, attempting to cripple our economy and bring us to our knees. But Venezuela came to our rescue and prevented a crisis from becoming a disaster. It was a happy time and a happy place. Great people, great music, great food, jungles, beaches, exciting politics. I was even there when Hugo Chavez first got elected. In that election, I had originally offered my support to Irene Saenz, who was the former Miss Universe and a personal friend. But the race eventually became between the firebrand populist Chavez and the establishment pro-U.S. candidate Romer. Those supporting Romer accused Chavez of offering false hope to the poor of Venezuela. My early prediction to them of a Chavez landslide was based on my analysis that most of the people in Venezuela would rather have false hope than no hope. I was also there to bring a disaster relief team when upwards of 40,000 people lost their lives in mudslides and avalanches. I was there during the coup that overthrew Chavez and its reversal, and the strike that shut down oil production and limited deliveries to our country. Of course, Chavez was there when I asked for gasoline to run generators and food and other supplies during our needs in New Orleans with Hurricane Katrina. And when he sent those supplies to help the people of New Orleans. And I was there when the animosities started between the Bush administration and Chavez and how that was a signal for all our adversaries around the world to visit Venezuela for strategic and economic reasons. Back then I used to joke by saying the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. Well, the Russians are here. And they came as Bush and Rice ridiculed Chavez and Chavez mocked them. And now I think we might be about to face another Cuban missile crisis in Venezuela when Russia builds an armaments plant there, as they announced. And now with the influence of Cubans at all levels of the Venezuelan government, there would be nothing more satisfying to Castro than to see those days of the missile crisis revisited when the world was focused on Cuba. Castro would love that, and so would Chavez, with the focus being on Venezuela this time. But with all we've got going on as a country, and with this administration seemingly ill-equipped to handle another front of confrontation, the result could probably be different this time, with us backing down. What happened to our relationships with Venezuela? What's happened to our diplomacy? I thought Barack Obama was going to have his administration reach out to the countries of the world and undo the diplomatic mistakes of the Bush administration. It looks as if the Obama administration is continuing the policies that drive many countries, especially those in South America, to become our enemies. And now with Russia building an armaments plant in Venezuela, reminiscent of the Cuban Missile Crisis, our country's news media is blaming Venezuela's Chavez for bringing the Russians to his country, with the Obama administration seemingly oblivious as to what has to be done to prevent situations like this from occurring in the future. Now, while many like to generalize about how Chavez is our enemy, let's not forget that he began buying arms from Russia because the Bush administration refused to sell Venezuela spare parts for their American-made and purchased weapons, in effect making those weapons inoperable and causing Venezuela to feel defenseless both domestically and from an outside threat. It was observed by many Venezuelans, and those I know, that the intended purpose of the refusal to sell spare parts to Venezuela was to allow for the overthrow of the Chavez government. Of course, that had been tried previously and failed in that coup attempt against the democratically elected Chavez years ago, with him blaming it on Bush, who supported the coup. And now Newsweek magazine just predicted that Chavez would be overthrown this year, causing Chavez to revisit the past, to further explain his dependence on the Russians for defense. With the continuation of this policy by the Obama administration, Chavez has upped the ante and is moving even closer to the Russians by having them not only build an armaments plant, but also conducting military exercises on the northern tip of South America, a stone's throw from Cuba, and the southern tip of the United States. Is the Obama administration going to wait until there are missiles or nuclear reactors on Venezuelan soil before attempting to restore positive relations with the Venezuelan government? Or will they just continue to turn their back and ignore all our neighbors to the south? It appears this administration's mode of operation is inaction until it becomes a crisis. But by then it will be too late to invite everyone over to that White House for a beer. And right under our noses, the Cubans and Russians have been working together to build offshore oil rigs just south of Key West, Florida, encroaching on our huge oil reserves without our country uttering a peep, even to its own citizens. Of course, their oil rigs haven't blown up, and they'll never have a moratorium on pumping oil in those waters. We are now beyond anything JFK would have allowed to happen, and the Russians could care less what we think. That's probably because with this administration, no one knows what we think. Believe me, the Russians will welcome the opportunity to visit our southern exposure again. This time, and with this administration and the recent events with our new allies in Eastern Europe, these Russians won't back down. Stay alert, folks. I think the worst is yet to come. And thanks for listening to An Average Joe.